What does it mean to truly ascend? Let's find out. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue to call all Jews. This one is called the Great Ascent. Now, before we get into it, I just wanted to let you guys know I understand that all these things that I'm saying, it's very, very difficult. Especially considering everything that's happening right now. I'm recording this right now. It's on a Monday. It should be up in a few hours. And we just got word that the markets are starting to crash all over the place. Not to mention that any second now, Iran is going to go nuts. All these things are written. I have so much that I have to share with you, but I understand that I could only do it in small doses because even that's too much for a lot of people. So again, these teachings are called Calling All Jews for a reason. All Jews, not if you identify as a Jew, okay? And if you question, am I not, then you are likely not. This is not a personal thing. I have teachings for everyone. I'm specifically calling all my brethren right now to come home. This is for everyone's benefit, okay? So let's get into this right now. But everything that's happening, we will be discussing next class. Forget about it. Something crazy for you. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing the very essence of Aliyah. What is Aliyah? When you make Aliyah, you come to Israel. But Aliyah means to ascend, right? When you're in Israel and you go to Jerusalem, you are making Aliyah to Jerusalem. In other words, it's the highest place on earth. And this is all about what? The return. What is the return? Teshuvah, to return. There are 3 ways to do tshuva, and make no mistake, everyone must do it on a daily basis, especially now, because you don't know where you're going to be in a few hours from now. You don't know what's coming or where it's coming from. That's why every moment you got to get right with God. So there are 3 ways to do tshuva. There's fear, there's reverence, and there is love. The first and lowest form is out of fear. Case in point, October 7th. As many of the survivors have miraculous stories, and they all have one thing in common. They cried out to God in the face of certain death. They made a deal with God, right? Their stories have been spread far and wide, and you wouldn't be able to watch it without it piercing your heart. You can't watch it and just remain calm. You're going to start to cry too, because it's going to speak to you. This is also another reason why God makes these things happen, to speak to all those that need to hear this. So all these individuals, they stared death in the face. It was coming for them, and they knew it beyond a shadow of a doubt because there was nowhere else to go. And at that moment, they cried out, Shema Yisrael, or they said, God, if you get me out of this, I vow to keep Shabbat for the rest of my days. They made a vow, all to return to God in one way or another. But the most common one was Shema Yisrael, right? Now, many of these individuals, they never said those words in their life. And yet it was their Jewish soul that cried out to God at a moment where there was nothing else to do. And guess what? They witnessed miracles as a result. We witnessed their stories as a result. One of my favorites is the story of this guy. Perhaps you've seen it. I know he actually did a tour in the States. He's covered in tattoos and piercings. He's got a kippah and he sits in a shul. It's in Hebrew, but they also translated it. And again, he came to the States. He's sitting in a synagogue, weeping as he shared what happened. So he was pulling into the Nova Festival with his wife as the Gazans descended upon them. I say Gazans and not Hamas because though there were 3,000 Hamas, there were several thousand Gazans too, coming in with flip-flops, pillaging, raping, murdering. Yeah, you know how our friendly neighbors, of course. Religion of peace, so they say. Anyway, so the Gazans descended upon them. He was on the phone with his brother right when everything went down. And his brother was screaming on the phone. He's saying this, sa, 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 go, 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 get out of here, get out of here. But it was too late. Right in front of them, there was a van with no less than 8 Gazans with AK-47s pointed right at them 2 meters away. Okay? That's, what is that, like 6, 7 feet away? Something like that. And they began to fire. 2 meters away, 8 AKs, fire. This man raised his voice and said, Shema Yisrael, Abba, ma ta rotze mimeni? Abba, what do you want from me? I'll do it. What do you want from me? I'm yours. I'm do it. Wholeheartedly. Long story short, not a single bullet even touched their car. And he and his wife got away safely. He came home, and he and his wife and then his 2 daughters did complete tshuva. The wife covers her hair right now. The guy's wearing tzitzit. He's putting on tefillin. He is so grateful, because it's not only that he was grateful to be alive. He was in a moment over there. We're going to get to that. This man had what I call a splitting of the sea moment. This supernatural event, make no mistake, this was supernatural. It went against nature, above nature. It did not make sense. No one can explain it, but we know where it comes from, right? This supernatural event took place in the face of certain death. That's the only way that this could take place. And they were saved because they cried out. At that moment, they did tshuva. They didn't think they were going to be saved, but the voices and the cry of the heart came from the truest place, from makom emet, truth. Because at that moment, there was nothing else. There was no one else. Only God, ein od milvado. That was what took place at that very moment. As a result, this man and his family are now part of the fully functioning and contributing part of Israel. Though he may have done tshuva out of fear at that moment, if it wasn't for that fear, he wouldn't have done tshuva at all, right? But it started off out of fear. He now continues his path of tshuva in reverence because he witnessed firsthand what God did for him, specifically for him. Why do we know? I'm sure there were other people who cried out Shema Yisrael and God took them. We don't know the cheshbon of God. It is not for us to question. It is only for us to see what is placed in front of us and be like, okay, there is a reason that this happened. And how many people did he inspire to do tshuva, this guy? He said so himself. He didn't know God before. He didn't know religion. He knew nothing. To him, God was all the shenanigans of how the media likes to portray the God-fearing Jews, right? So you can't blame him if he wanted no part in that. The media never portrays Orthodox Jews in a positive light. I mean, again, when I was living in the States, this person did this person did that. But when it's a Jew, this person who is an so-and-so, who is an Orthodox Jew, did this and this and that, something that another dude would have done. But they make sure to point out that he's an Orthodox Jew. That was in the States, that's in the global media, and guess what? They do it here too. There's a direct connection over there. No different. So of course people don't like those religious guys, you Charedim haele, you this, how they speak about them. It's all how they paint them. So to him, like we said, that was God. What these people represented and how they were misrepresented, that was God, because that's all he knew. What this man experienced is what our ancestors did on Yam Suf some 3,330 years ago. Like all things, God set up the apparent tragedy to save souls in life and in death. We know that Hamavet Mechaperet, sometimes the death atones. Just see our ancestors 40 years in the wilderness. And to all my fellow Jews out there, you need to understand something. One way or another, we are all going to have to go through our own individual exodus and splitting of the sea, 2 different events, if we want to make it out of the Galut and through to the Geulah. What do I mean by this? This means to know what is coming, we always have to look at the point of origin. Always. In this case, the prototype of the final redemption, the exodus from Egypt. As Solomon said, Ma shehayahu zeh sheyeh, ve'ein chadash tachat hashemesh. What was is what will be, and there's nothing new under the sun. Israel was breaking under the pressure in Egypt. At that time, Egypt was a melting pot of all the world's idolatry and the system that had been put into place. That was the world system. There was a one world order, and it was Egypt at that time, on purpose. It's the equivalence of today's global system, which we are, if you're not struggling from, don't worry, you will. Any day now. There are things happening every single day. And you better believe we're going to cover that as well. So God used Egypt to turn up the heat because it was time for the redemption. We cannot just be redeemed just because it is time. There's Be'ita and there's Achishena. We will also talk about it. I am God and Be'ita b'Achishena in its time or in hastening. Okay. And the deal is that we have to ask for it. Why is Mashiach not here? We're not asking for it because we don't care if Mashiach comes. God forbid, but this is true. Everybody's so consumed in what they have to do that, oh, well, if Mashiach comes now, this business that I built, this empire, this, it all goes down the drain and now I got to do what God wants. Do you know where you would be if you were in Egypt thinking like that? We'll get to that as well. We have to ask, okay? We have the right to ask for it. We have to ask for these things. This is how God set it up. Open line of communication. If you're looking this way or anywhere in this direction, what is God going to do? Knock it down like dominoes. So there's nowhere and nothing that we can turn to except for our Heavenly Father, okay? And so, on all accounts, anything that happens that gets us to cry out to God is a mercy, because otherwise we still would have been in Egypt. Exodus 2, 24, 25, the last two verses in the chapter. God heard their cry, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. In other words, it had nothing to do with them. They still haven't made tshuva just because they're crying out, life is so hard. People are doing that today. Doesn't mean they made tshuva. So it's not because of them. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, thank you, as God told Moses afterwards. I'm here because I remember the covenant. And God saw the children of Israel, and God knew. Not for our own sakes, none of us there, okay? But for God's name's sake, since he gave his word to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then he gave Jacob his own name, Israel. And so we family now, but we still have to ask wholeheartedly. And when we did, out of desperation, it was desperation at first. What happened in the very next verse? Behold, the Redeemer is called, the prototype of Mashiach. Exodus 3:1. Moses was pasturing the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law, chief of Midian, and he led the flocks after free pasture land, and he came to the mountain of God, to Chorev. This is the entire 40-year story right here in this one verse. Okay, all right. So what happened after the Redeemer showed up on the scene? Mashiach is coming, yay, life is good. What happened with Moses? Did life for Israel get easier or substantially, ridiculously more difficult? Exodus 5:18. And now, go and work, said Pharaoh to Israel after Moses stopped by and said, the Lord said, let my people go. But you will not be given stubble. Nevertheless, the same number of bricks you must give. Oh, what? Okay. In fact, it got so bad that Moses himself questioned God on this matter. Exodus 5:22-23. So Moses returned to the Lord and said, "O Lord, why have you harmed this people? Why have you sent me? Since I've come to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has harmed this people, and you have not saved your people." This, by the way, this is that moment that, pretty much sealed Moses' fate that he was not going to enter into the land of Israel. God said, "Atatire, now you will see what I'm going to do to them," meaning now, but not later on. Read the Mefarshim on this. In fact, some people say that, some of the sages say that it was actually at the burning bush when there was a whole back and forth going with him. It says, "Shlachna be'adcha tishlach," send who you will send, meaning you already got Aaron, you got Pinchas who's going to be Eliyahu. Send these guys. Eliyahu's supposed to tell us when Mashiach's coming. Send him. He's right there. Go send him. God got very upset. And so some people say that that's that moment. But the whole thing with the rock, it was just a gotcha moment for this, because we already knew before that, because of the two prophets who did not go out with the other prophets. I'm getting off topic. I apologize. Let's continue. When Mashiach comes, Jews will not magically be whisked away on the wings of eagles to the peaceful land of Israel. In fact, most Jews won't even believe that Mashiach is in fact a Mashiach. And again, what, you need miracles to come to Israel? The miracle is a jet plane. You're 500 people in the air in a metal tube sitting on comfortable, cushy seats. You get served tea and coffee. Seems like a miracle, especially if you're speaking this long ago. What's up? It's going to cause more strife among us when Mashiach comes, but there is a reason for this. It lies in the words spoken by Moses. Mi la'Hashem elai. Whoever is for God, with me. When Mashiach comes, Jews are going to get squeezed the hardest. It took a year from the time that Moses was called by the burning bush until they actually broke free of the system. But what happened during that time? All right, Moshe, the whole thing with the burning bush, that was on Erev Pesach, 1 year before the actual Exodus. So why did God simply not take out Egypt with one fell swoop? Boom, Egypt's gone, let's go. The first reason, to show the world who commands every aspect of his creation. The second reason was to give Israel a chance to strengthen their faith in God and the promise that he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Oh, you mean those fables that my parents told me were true? You mean there is merit to the Torah? Understand, this is what's happening here today. Half of Israel, and even I'd say half of Orthodox Jews, I don't even know that they believe in Mashiach. They're like, yeah, we're in the Mashiach time now. No, we're not. Not even close. Where's the temple? That's it. Not in the times of Mashiach. Look what's happening. Every day, the Egyptians and their hold on Israel weakened, while Israel strengthened simultaneously. God took them down one peg at a time in order to raise Israel up. One peg at a time. You cannot skip a step. This is one thing we know from Judaism. You do not skip steps. You don't just get boom and now you know all things. You have to work for it. We have to toil in Torah. There's a reason that God made it this way. You actually have to work. So now we know that the Makot, each one was greater than the next, as Egypt were being systematically decimated, spiritually, economically, militarily, and likely mentally as well. This is what is happening in the world right now, to the entire world, because this is that same system that enslaves its inhabitants, breaking them the way they did to his kids. One at a time, one at a time, one at a time. If you want to know their method, read Sefer HaYashar. In English, it's the book of Jasher. Okay? This is a legitimate book. It is mentioned twice in the Torah. Rashi talks about it. It's called Sefer Milchamot Hashem. It starts with Adam from the moment that he came here until the death of Joshua. They have the sons of Jacob going nuts over there, destroying armies, just 10 of them over there. And it really explains how the Egyptians got Israel, who were mighty at the time. Remember, after Jacob and the brothers started to die, Israel, they had all the high positions. They had all the wealth in the land. They were numerous. They were massive. And how did it happen all of a sudden now that they were downtrodden and the Egyptians had their boots on the Israelites' neck? One step at a time. You never just put on full blast the heat. Slightly, you turn up the heat, and those who you dwell in their lands, they identify with you, I solidify with you, they make you very comfortable. And then slowly but surely, they start removing your individual rights. You cannot own property, you cannot walk on the sidewalk, you cannot, you have no benefits, you have to give up any firearms that you have, and so on and so forth. Just like, again, history, we still have survivors. This is exactly what happened, and it's going to be happening again. In fact, it is happening, but people don't think it's happening because you're so inundated in the system. Let's continue. Measure for measure. That's how God works. But then came the ninth plague, the plague of darkness. And what happened? Was there anything that was destroyed in Egypt at the time? Did any Egyptian die? Granted, our sages say that the darkness was actually tangible, right? It would freeze you wherever it was, and you can actually feel it engulfing you. And it was the primordial darkness that we see in Genesis 1-2, the darkness on the face of the deep. That is the darkness of Gehinnom. And this is what they went through. So it was certainly not fun for them, but that wasn't the point. The point was to get rid of those who would not leave from our end. You understand what I'm saying? I hope you've learned this, okay? If you were an Orthodox Jew, you really need to understand that this is what went down. Now, you may be asking yourself, how could it possibly be? Hear me now. What I speak of then, I speak of now. Prototype, okay? How could it possibly be that after 8 plagues, the miracles they saw, the prophecies that have been given have been manifesting before their very eyes, and yet our sages say that those who were taken out of the darkness would simply not leave Egypt. We're talking about the Israelites. I never said that they didn't believe in God or that they had any doubt that that they were in fact God's firstborn son, as God said to Moses to tell Pharaoh, Exodus 4:22, and you shall say to Pharaoh, so said the Lord, my firstborn son is Israel, right? I know it's crazy. It's insane. Can you imagine what went down over there? Being so inundated in the system of the world that you would still call yourself Israel. Not change your names to foreign names. Like the Israelites, they did not change their names. They still kept on giving themselves the Hebrew names. They didn't change their dress to match theirs, like the Israelites. They didn't even worship idols as their captors did, like the Israelites. And yet, in other words, you are maintaining your Jewish identity in all aspects, in all facets. You are a Torah-observant Jew. You don't take on any foreign things. You're not in Israel. And yet, when it was time to leave, when all the signs were there in your face screaming at you, including the Redeemer, and finally it was time to go home, to the land that was promised, to the land that, this is what started this whole thing. Lech lecha me'artzecha, God told Abraham, to the land that I will show you. That's the land, that's for you, that belongs to you. When you are on your land, the world becomes better. To the land that was promised, what was their answer? Nah, I'm good here. I'm not making this stuff up. God looked into the hearts of everyone, and these seemed comfortable where they were. Which begs the question, was it not terrible for them where they were that they called to God to begin with? Why then stay? Reasons, right? So, it's terrible here, but I'm just gonna, okay. Maybe they just built a new synagogue, right? Or perhaps they just put a down payment on a house. Or maybe, a new king arose who gave Israel hope to stay put where they are with golden hair, although even anything is questionable right now, putting their faith in a man and not in God, which I'm sure we all know what it says in Psalms 118, right? It is better to take shelter in the Lord than to trust in man. It is better to take shelter in the Lord than trust in princes, even presidents. It says, Jeremiah says, Baruch hagever asher yiftach ba'Adonai. Blessed is the man who trusts God. Arur hagever asher yiftach ba'adam. What is arur? Arur, you might say cursed. No. Mekulal is cursed. Arur is damned. Damnation, as in you're not coming back from that. You are done. Who was damned? The serpent in the Garden of Eden. Arur ata. You are damned. There's no coming back for the serpent because of what happened. Look at the language. So like we said, only 20% of Israel left Egypt at that time, despite all these things taking place. So this is the first time, right? Because the other 80%, they never saw a problem where they were to begin with. Okay, we'll get through it. No big deal. They could still be Israel and Egypt, they said, just as you can be Jews in America, the UK, or France, right? We told you. I told you. We were told. You either get out with whatever money you can, or you will be lucky to get out with the clothes on your back. You know what one of the ministers just said yesterday? They're already preparing cargo planes in all these countries right now, just in case Jews or Israelis have to flee them. You think I'm joking? This is happening right now. It's time to wake up. Anyway, so I have to wonder, because we know there will be a gathering, right? It is written, but who is going to remain to be gathered? There's the question. Because the gathering takes place after all the balagan happens here in Israel. So if you didn't come when you could, why do you believe that you're going to be around when it's time? You have a duty. There's a very big difference here between Judah and Israel. If you read all the prophecies, wherever it says Israel, Nidachei Israel, those who have been rejected of Israel, meaning the 10 northern tribes from the Assyrian kingdom. They took them out, mixed them up. They're all over the place. They're likely hiding within Christianity and within Islam. Those are the ones that will be gathered. Not everybody, obviously, right? They're going to be waking up and they're going to be gathered because they didn't even know who they are. But you, a Jew, you know who you are. There's no excuse. I'm not reading any excuses in the prophets. Are you? Anyway, so why do you believe that you'll come instead of the 10 lost tribes? That, gathering the exiles is coming. We're waiting for miracles. The miracles, like we said, they're the aeroplanes. Okay. So, in fact, I would venture to say, in my humble opinion, that it is they who will be gathered and whisked away in the wings of eagles to the Holy Land of Israel, meaning Israel, the 10 lost tribes. Please think of these things that I'm presenting to you today, okay? I know I have a way about me, and I know I could upset a lot of people. It's really nothing personal, but if I get under your skin just to get you moving enough, I don't care. Good. Come home. I'm not doing this to be, I told you so. Please do this for all our sakes, especially for your sake. Now, if I'm wrong, then I'm just a maniac from Israel. But if you're wrong, you have no future. Like we said, everything that I'm presenting, this is from the Torah, the Nevi'im, the Ketuvim, the Tanakh, the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Zohar. I'm giving you the Teudot, I'm giving you the receipts, I'm showing you where all this stuff is coming from. Please take the words that I'm saying right now and refute them. I'm speaking to the Jews. Again, not somebody who identifies as a Jew. Really, especially Orthodox Jews right now. There's a reason I'm saying this. And no, of course, I'm not saying that there's no place for Noahides. That's a whole nother conversation. Okay? This is calling all Jews right now. So please. All right. So let's continue with the tshuva process because we're still in part 1. Fear. This is necessary. You need to hear this. After Israel already left Egypt. Egypt was decimated. They left Egypt. Was it over? Were they free and clear? How many days of Pesach do we have, right? Why did God even bother taking us out of Egypt? Can we not be good Jews wherever we may be? Brooklyn? I don't know. Let's see what God says. What do I know? Bamidbar 15:41. I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. Did you hear that? Let me say this again with the proper emphasis for those who read it any other way. I am the Lord your God. I am the Lord your God. You, not anybody, you, who took you out of the land of Egypt in order to be your God. Because I will not be your God the way you want in a foreign land. I will be your God the way I want in the land that I need you to be in. We're already bringing up verses from the Shema, right? This is from the Shema. You know, the charter that God gave us to separate us from the nations. You can call it our Pledge of Allegiance, if you will. It is, after all, the Jewish prayer. So what else does the Shema say? We say the Shema every day, don't we? From Dvarim 11:13. And it will be, if you hearken to my commandments. Right? My commandments that I command you this day to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Are we in fact doing that? I will give the rain of your land. Your land. Where's the land? The land is not Muncie, I promise you. Of your land in its time. The early rain and the latter rain. That's Tchiyat HaMetim, by the way, the latter rain. And you will gather your grain, your wine, and your oil. Not from around the globe, but from your backyard in Israel. It doesn't say the rain elsewhere. But your land, it says, the one your forefathers were tasked with settling, the one you, as a Jew, must claim. Let's read on. Beware lest your heart be misled. Life is better elsewhere. And you turn away and worship strange gods and prostrate yourselves before them. What are strange gods? It's not necessarily, oh, look, I built this nice little dummy over here. I'm going to go bow down to it. Obviously, that's not that. But any other reason that you should worship something instead of doing what you need to do. We'll call it money. We'll call it self. We'll call it career. We'll call it ego. We'll call it whatever you want to call it. Anything that takes you away from doing what you need to do, where you need to do it. That's what that is. That is idolatry. That is modern day idolatry. What does God say? And the wrath of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will close off the heavens, and there will be no rain on the ground, will not give its produce. Guess what? And you will perish quickly from upon the good land that the Lord gives you. Did you hear? It's almost as if God is saying that being in the land of Israel is a good thing, right? But not being in the land of Israel is a punishment? Wow, right? So then why do we do what we do? In order that your days may increase and the days of your children on the land, which the Lord swore to your forefathers to give them as the days of heaven above the earth. Maybe I'm missing something here, right? Where is this land again? Okay. Every place upon which the soles of your feet, verse 24, the soles of your feet will tread, will be yours. No, wait, hold on, we got borders. From the desert, south, and the Lebanon, north, from the river. The river is always, whenever it says the river, that's the Nile in Egypt, which is southwest. The Euphrates River to the east, and until the western sea, Mediterranean, right? The west, will be your boundary. Just read the verses. It's right there. Do we understand? This is why God took us out of Egypt. The 40 years in the desert, it was just practice. We just finished reading it in the Parsha. You got to be here to unlock and unleash the full potential of what it means to be in Israel. Then you also must ask yourselves, when you say the Shema, do you believe in what you're actually saying, or do you not feel good? Do you feel like I'm saying this, but I'm really kind of feeling hypocritical? I'm pledging my Shema Yisrael, Hear O Israel, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, but do I actually believe it? Because day in and day out, I'm saying these things, and yet it's all about being and doing in the land of Israel, and you are not there. Are you seeing a theme over here? I mean, you're certainly not acting upon it. These words are very much conditional. Devarim chapter 1, verse 6, 7. The Lord our God spoke to us in Chorev, saying, you have dwelt long enough as at this mountain. Adonai Eloheinu diber elenu b'chorev le'emor rav lachem shevet bahar hazeh. Enough. Turn and journey and come to the mountain of the Amorites and to all its neighboring places in the plain, on the mountain and in the lowland in the south, and by the seashore, the land of the Canaanites and the Lebanon, until the great river, the Euphrates River. He just gave us all the borders again. See, I have set the land before you. Come and possess the land. This is a direct command from God. Come and possess the land which the Lord swore to your forefathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them and their descendants after them. There's only one way to do this. You're not afraid yet, I know, but you should also know what's coming. What happened to the 20% of Israel who did decide to leave the world system and venture to the land that was promised? They still had to be tested, right? Were they worthy of being redeemed? They still had to cross the sea now, didn't they? Now, I want you to picture this scenario. This is something that hit me in the last year. And again, we know the story of Kriyat Yamsuf. We read it on Pesach, but we also say it every single day. Hazeh Moshe Bnei Yisrael, the song of Moses by the sea. We know this, right? But the thing is, we kind of take it for granted because it's a story. We know the story. So get in the headspace with me. It's very important. You are Israel back then. You witnessed the destruction of Egypt. You have been led by Moses, Aaron, and Miriam with a pillar of fire guiding your way at night and clouds covering you during the day. This is not real, but it is, right? And you're camped out in front of the sea. Now what? You're kind of squeezed in over there. We know what comes next, but I want to ask a question you might not have thought of. Have you ever considered the mindset of Israel back then when their beachfront lounging area would become a death trap? Have you ever considered that Israel never even considered that the sea would split? They had no idea. That thought never crossed their mind. I know this because this is what God did, and we see the outcome. They had no idea. That's what's ridiculous about this. Even the thought that this would happen, no way. Did you know what? When that happened, they couldn't believe it. Now, I really want you to try and go there for a moment because it'll help us understand the point. This is very important. This is not for me, okay? This is for you. What do you think that they were thinking? How do you think that they were feeling? Complete confusion, like we just witnessed that, and it's been a year and we're out, and finally, but now we're here, and it's this confusion, there's terror, there's hopelessness, there's sadness. What is happening right now? The Egyptians were, that's it, about to take them out. They knew they were all going to die. Every last one of them. There was no way out. There was nowhere to turn. I hope you see where I'm going with this. Even Moses had no idea what was going to happen until God told him what to do. Kind of like our guy from the beginning of the video, don't you think? There is death, be it from the Gazans or from the Egyptians. And here, right here, this is where my story ends. So I guess there's only one thing left to do. And hear me now, because like I said, we're all going to get to this very point. In one way or another. Exodus 14:10. Pharaoh drew near, and the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were advancing after them. They were very frightened. Obviously, the English doesn't do it. Vayra'u me'od. Not vayra'u. They couldn't breathe. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Vaytzaku bnei Israel el Adonai. When that happened, when Israel were pushed to the brink, and I say this now because honestly, it's probably, any day now, any day, right? When you have a rain of fire coming in here, you don't know what, who, where, when. Nobody, nothing else is going to save you. You see, this is where God had to bring Israel. Nothing else except. When that happened, when Israel were pushed to the brink, when they saw death coming for them, regardless of its form, it was God who made it so that they had no other options. So they had nowhere else to go. So they had nowhere to turn. So they could not rely on anything or anyone but God alone. Tell me that's not a favor. Tell me that's not mercy. This is the moment that God brought Israel to tshuva shlema. All of Israel, complete tshuva. It was that cry And when all of Israel cried out to God together as one, not because life was difficult like the first time, because God still has mercy on us, but because they quite literally had all their options taken away. That is what caused the sea to split. That is what made the impossible possible, the unfathomable real. No way, and yet there it is. At that moment, our work was done, and God just rolled up his sleeves, told his kids to get behind him, and said, watch this. The Lord will fight for you, but you shall remain silent. Adonai lachem lachem v'atem tachalishun. That's it. I just needed that point. Because otherwise, if God would not have squeezed us like that, we would never be able to get there on our own. It would be impossible. What, you think there weren't righteous in Israel? Of course there were. Most of Israel were extremely righteous, tzaddikim. But they still had to be squeezed because that was the only way. Even if you start doing tshuva right now, you can never be fully prepared for what is to come. And all our sages say this, and all the prophets say this. There has got to be a tremendous amount of fear right before the time of the end, because that's we're going to see what you're made of. We're going to see who you cry out to. We're going to see if you can stand. So then that's when God takes care of the rest of the nations. That's our Gog and Magog. Okay, Gog and Magog. It's not about us. We are used as bait. Yes, just like Israel were used here as bait to get all the worlds, all the nations. Yes, all means all, honey. Okay, including the good old US of A. All means all against Israel. Oh, they're all coming here. If you want to hitch a ride with them, maybe. Where's this all going to happen? It's going to happen in the land of Israel. And so all Israel did tshuva at that moment out of fear. On that day, the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dying on the seashore. And Israel saw the great hand which the Lord had used upon the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and of Moses, and Moses his servant. Let's read that one in Hebrew. Vayera Israel. את היד הגדולה אשר עשה אדוני במצרים, ויראו העם את אדוני, ויאמינו באדוני ובמשה עבדו. From that point on, there was a second and higher tshuva. Vayera, vayera'u. Vayera, fear, vayera'u. Again, it's the same word, but these are the levels. There was now reverence. When they looked at this point at God and Moses, oh, what just happened? We just and if you read I did a teaching on this in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Have at it. The miracles that God did for them, the conditions that he appeased them with to cross through is insane. We can't even begin to imagine these things, yet that happened. And when it was all said and done, it wasn't, yes, there was fear, but there was reverence. There was, you are the master of the universe. What else is left to do but start singing? Yes, so you see, there is a difference between fear and between reverence, but many times in the Torah, the same word is used, ira'ah. The way to understand which is to understand, obviously, the context. So after Israel were essentially feared into tshuva, what happened over the next 40 years? That turned into reverence. I shall make a mighty nation out of you yet. As it produced a nation filled with men and women of valor. So by the time that they entered into the land, yes, they tripped up plenty of times. That's okay. It's all written down from the 6 days of creation. Leaders could be found in each tribe, as we all need to ultimately be in the same place at the same state, ready to receive Mashiach and the final redemption. Look at the book of Judges. There were heroes rising from every tribe. This is on purpose. It's not just one man from one. We all have to be mighty men and women of valor. As Abraham said at the Akedah in Genesis 22:14, and Abraham named that place the Lord will see, as it said on this day, on the mountain the Lord will be seen. Vaikra Avraham Shem Mokamohu Adonai Yira'eh, Asher Yomar Hayom Behar Adonai Yira'eh. Yir'eh, yira'eh. It's the same word pretty much. fear, revere. God will be seen, feared, and revered. What about love? How do we do tshuva out of love? Well, you can't skip any of these steps. Naturally, you can't just all of a sudden, God, I love you so much, I'm going to do tshuva. No. But you don't even have to worry about that right now, okay? I don't need to teach that. That's something you're going to experience way later on once you actually see the truth. Because like all things, God will take care of that as well. But you should know, the less we do now, the less we prepare for what is, it's not only what's to come, we're currently in it. We are currently in, you guys need to start fleeing is what I'm saying. The less we do now, the more difficult it is going to be for us all later on. We all need to do our hishtadlut. Do not force God's hand to bring you to where you need to be, to where you could have been on your own, because most will not be able to stand what is coming. The great ascent, the great aliyah began when? The final great aliyah in 1948, when we could, for the first time in 2,000 years, return to our homeland for really. And as difficult as it's going to be over here, I think you see the sense of why it's going to be way more difficult anywhere else. Plus, if your thought is, you know what, well, it's going to be terrible over here, I'll just wait there, like we said, and I'll come here afterwards. If you think you're coming here, you have another thing coming. And chutz mizeh, besides that, if your people are about to be taken out, you wouldn't want to be with your people? Where else would you want to be? That's it. Israel's going out tomorrow. Nukes are coming in. No one's stopping it. Wink, get it? But let's say no one's stopping it. You wouldn't want to come if they go, I go. Well, you want to live your life as a pretend Jew somewhere else? Why would you want to be anywhere else? This is crunch time. This is now. You don't want to get caught outside. You don't want to be put through that. So listen, I said this wasn't going to be an easy listen, but the truth rarely is. Someone's got to say it. Okay. Please consider my words and why I say them, and email me if you have questions. Your patience is appreciated. I have a bunch to get to, but I'm only answering serious inquiries. Please be respectful, okay? Like I said, this is calling all Jews. When I teach Torah to everybody, and I discuss plenty of times the Noahides. And if you guys don't know this, and you are, okay, if you are a Noahide, meaning you don't believe in Jesus or any of that other garbage, you don't believe in any other false religions, false idols, any of that stuff, no idolatry, but you believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you live by the 7 Noahide laws, guess what? You have a place in the world to come. That's as simple as that, okay? That's another story. I'm speaking to the Jews right now because the Jews need to unlock this. So if you know of any Jews anywhere, please share this with them, okay? So stay tuned for our upcoming classes when we'll be discussing the signs of the times, different timelines, and how things are going to take place according to the prophets and the sages. We're actually, this is incredible. We're living through some of these things. Next class is going to blow your mind, but you need to understand this class was, everybody's going to be going through this on their own personal level. Not only Jews, but everybody. But Jews need to be here. So as always, like I said, if you feel like anyone you know may benefit from these teachings, please continue to share them. Because like we said, if we can get even one Jewish family back home, we all merit this. And I already know of at least one Jewish family that are coming back home. Baruch Hashem, look at that. We just saved several new worlds. You guys did a great job of spreading this word last time, and so gratitude. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again real soon. Bye-bye.